I'm going to be speaking on social media monitoring. Because there was two incidents in Glendale School District where they decided to pay a firm to monitor the students, and whether it was effective or not is at controversy. My opponent's claim is that by implementing social media monitoring, we are implementing a new method of online safety that can help prevent both online and offline bullying, possible acts of suicide, and increase the level of parental involvement. However, I will be refuting each and every one of these, and hopefully you can share the same ideas as me. The first claim is that social media monitoring prevents both online and offline bullying. Friedreich, the leader of the firm which was monitoring the students at Glendale, he explains that the youth, they have like symbols, phonetic spellings, abbreviations, and many other ways of communicating. Like instead of spelling hate like H-A-T-E, you can spell like H-A, or we also have a lot of slang terms for like whether it's drugs or things like that. So monitoring might not be as effective as we think, and also you can change your privacy settings on social networks, so it's as easy as picking and choosing who gets to look through your profile. And many of my opponents' claims were statistics on how often bullying occurs or how big of a problem it is, but I don't really see how that's relevant to this situation. I'm sure we can all agree bullying is a problem, suicide is a problem, but the real problem is finding a plan of action, and I don't see how we can just jump to social media monitoring because of that. Also, I don't necessarily think that social media monitoring will prevent both online and offline bullying. Like, couldn't the bully just bully them outside of like the internet, in person, physically or something? And wouldn't they have more of an incentive to if they can't do it online? And by this logic, we can't really monitor them both online and offline. That would be totalitarianism or something extreme like that. Moving on to the second claim, social media monitoring helps prevent teens from committing suicide. According to CBS Los Angeles, in one of the two incidents at Glendale School District of the suicide, student Drew Ferraro committed suicide jumping off to his death in the central campus wide area. However, when school officials and many others were asked whether they thought it was associated with bullying, many of them said they didn't think it was. The whole bullying thing was kind of just an assertion the friends made over the boy committing suicide. And let's face it, teenagers do have a natural tendency to exaggerate situations and that kind of thing. A correlation doesn't necessarily mean a relationship. Also, my opponent states that Chris Friedreich, the CEO of a firm, had previously addressed that they already saved a life. They had an intervention with a student that was speaking of ending his life, and he didn't end up ending his life. And as luckily as it sounds, they probably weren't the reason why he didn't end his life. Maybe he never had an intention. Maybe he just wanted attention. I know I have a friend who he has posted a bunch of Facebook statuses saying he wants to commit suicide, this and that, and he really looks like he wants attention. And I stopped concerning myself over those statuses like a while ago. And the third claim and final is that social media monitoring builds a bridge between students and parents, leading to more parental involvement. CNN reported that Glendale students aged 13 and older, the age at which parental permission isn't required for school monitoring, which means they don't even need the parents' consent. So I don't see how parental involvement is going to be increased if you're not even asking them whether they want their kids to be monitored or not. They're pretty much not going to be involved, and if anything, they'll be less involved because they'll probably rely on the schools just to discipline the students. It's like sexual education. Why talk about it with your kids when the school's going to do it for you? And also, as much as parents want to protect their kids from bullying, they want them to succeed just as bad. With legislation such as the Eraser Bill, which Democratic Jerry Brown signed this year, it allows students to delete their so-called skeletons in their closet, and this is so they won't ruin their reputation. They can apply to colleges and all that type of thing. And I'm pretty sure the youth has its mistakes, and parents don't really want them to ruin their life just because of something they posted when they were kids. So maybe that might be more important to them than bullying. With this in mind, The truth is, you have to test this method more before jumping to the conclusion that we need social media monitoring. You have to think of all the controversies it would spark with privacy issues. And I'm sure we can all acknowledge these are problems, but there has to be an alternative. More research has to be done. And also, let's stay skeptical and think broadly. What if bullying isn't even the issue with these suicides? As the years go by, our generation is growing more diverse and unorthodox. However, I'm positive that with time we will progress and take a step toward finding the answer. I hope I persuaded everyone to share the same perspective in my standing. Thank you.
Okay, structurally everything is pretty clear. The argument on the first point seems to be about bullying and whether or not it is involved. It sounds to me like your first claim is really an argument that bullying could continue and monitoring wouldn't be very effective on it because hypothetically people could disguise what they're doing. I think that depends a little bit on the effectiveness of the monitoring and whether or not people would be able to understand those messages. There's a big presupposition here that the monitors are going to be unable to do such a thing. I think that's a little bit problematic. I like the other argument about the privacy setting, for instance. If the privacy setting is something that would prevent a monitor from having access to the social media, then it seems to me like anybody who's engaged in bullying and wants to get away with it, all they have to do is change that. That's kind of a hypothetical. I don't know what the procedure for monitoring would be, so if that is applicable there, that would seem to be a big flaw in the system and a legitimate criticism. I did think, for instance, that you had raised a legitimate question about whether or not bullying is the primary problem for some of the problems that are being cited by the advocate here. I thought that that's a good question to raise. It seems like it's a presupposition rather than something that's demonstrated. You also have a counterclaim here that seems to suggest that it's likely to drive bullies to engage in their bullying off of the internet. Would that be a worse thing? Would it be more likely to occur? Is it unlikely to be supervised in that particular situation? I think that those are, it's very hypothetical in nature, which I think you ought to contrast to what the advocate's point is, which seems to also be equally hypothetical. On the suicide issue, you're a little bit more direct here, talking about the examples that were raised by the advocate. You do assert that teens exaggerate, that it may be just a pursuit of a need for attention. I think that there's probably some good evidence on that particular point. We have no way of checking if your friend online is really just seeking attention, or maybe, I think you'd feel terrible if something did happen. I've just ignored that all along. That would, I think, probably make you feel bad and quite guilty. So I don't know what the answer on this particular point is. I do think the notion that that it's hard to demonstrate that an intervention by the monitor is what prevented this person from committing suicide. I think it's a legitimate question to ask in a good press. How we measure any of that, that's a little bit hard to figure out. And then on the last issue, I thought that you had an interesting point, and that is that the idea that this is going to be a bridge between parents and children is an interesting one. The analogy that you drew to sex education, I thought, was probably the best point. Well, once parents believe that it's going to be the responsibility of the schools, they abdicate responsibility for it. I think you could give us a little bit more information on that to show that that is a valid conclusion about what's going on, and then your analogy would make more sense. The analogy seems like it's a good analogy. The question is it a true analogy? Okay, thank you.